There's a belief that in order for people to be motivated to do something, you need to put a carrot in front of them. But that's not true. That works for donkeys, not for people. A lot of founders feel that culture is something that you can build, but you don't build a culture. Culture is. I feel that I'm doing something that is meaningful. I feel that I'm good. I'm feeling recognized, and therefore I want to do more.
Organizations are made of people, and people break or make your organization. Join me as I talk with Anne Caron about people strategy. How to build up your people so that they can build up your organization. She was hired to place Google on the map as a top employer in Europe. Today, she helps founders to scale up through their people strategy. Join me for another great conversation. Anne, thank you for accepting my invitation. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor.
Good. Okay, I have to start by asking you, why did you leave Google and started working with startups? Were you nuts?
Yes, I get that a lot. A lot of people, when I left Google, were asking me why I would leave such a company. But yeah, in total, I stayed with Google for 10 years, and it was kind of time for me to leave. When I joined Google in 2005, the company was still rather small. Globally, we were only 5,000 people. And in Europe, where I was based, it was 1,500 people. And so we were actually struggling a lot to attract people. People didn't know Google as an employer. They knew the search engine, of course, but not so much the employer. So we could not attract people. People were not applying. So that's why I was hired. And it was fabulous because everything had to be built. There was nothing in place really, and I'm a builder, so that was fabulous. 10 years later, we were 65,000 people, so quite a different company with different challenges. And so I didn't have as much of a passion as I had at the beginning, so that's when I left. Wasn't quite sure what I was going to do. Ended up meeting with people in startup environment and realizing that, whoa, that's definitely the type of place for me. The ecosystem was still very nascent in Asia. That was in 2015, so really there were not that many startups there. So everything had to be built. It was made for me, and a big challenge is to solve.
Now it makes totally sense. So let's leave Google and let's focus on Anne. So what drives you?
What drives me is exactly, solving big problems. I think what I was lacking when I was at Google was the impact towards the end, to be able to really have an impact on the organization, on the people, on the world potentially. And this is something that I have found in what I do now. So this is really what drives me. What excites me as well is working with founders. Startup founders are often very inspiring. They carry on missions that are beautiful. I get to choose those ones, which is fabulous. So this is really also driving me in what I do.
And what breaks your heart about what's happening today in the world or around you?
What breaks my heart is when people are unhappy at work, and when companies break because the founders have not, or the leaders, have not anticipated enough in advance to see people issues. And that's usually what breaks companies, it's people. And so that breaks my heart because people are unhappy, and I want to make my mission, my personal mission is to bring happiness to the workplace. And so, yeah, when I often see startups that have everything to be beautiful with, as I said, inspiring founders, gorgeous mission, amazing crew, and at some point it just breaks because there are some elements missing. Disengagement starts to happen. People do not really know why they're here anymore, and that I find sad.
Okay. So this is a good segue to understand the topic of today, which is like people strategy in startups. So first, what is people strategy?
Very good question, because I don't think it's yet a thing. People are starting to speak more and more about people strategy now, but when I started and I came with the terminology in Asia 8 years ago, it was not really it. So usually people see people strategy as HR, but there's much more than just HR to people strategy. You need to think about this in this way. Companies are made of people, and people will make or break the company. A business plan, which is what a company is here for, right? There's a mission, and then they have a business plan on how to execute the mission, is only just a piece of paper until you actually have people to execute it. So it's all about people. And so limiting the people strategy to just HR is a big mistake. The responsibility, the ownership of people strategy is not with HR. It is with the founders, with the CEO. Because as they set up the business strategy, right after comes the people strategy, which is how do we deliver that? And what are all the systems that... So it's much broader.
Yeah, I think it's such a big topic. There's so much there to unpack. But I think what I would like to go is, like you mentioned before, that you see a lot of startups, they have everything, they have the mission, they're inspired, they bring the team, but at some point something breaks, right? What is that? What's happening with the startups when it breaks?
So there are usually a few mistakes that start to make early stage. I would say it usually starts at early stage when building the foundations. Usually it's either they start building too early, so they add too much complexity into the organization while they're very small, and it doesn't require that. For instance, I have seen startups as small as 10 people have a 360 performance review or an employee engagement or employee satisfaction survey. And it's like, why adding so much complexity and driving inefficiency while you can actually speak to people? So that's one of the main issues. The second is to build too late, to focus a lot on the business strategy. So we need to get there to grow and to grow up to a certain scale where the problems are starting to rise, and they're calling people like me, or they're hiring HR saying fix it, but the foundation's not being there. It's only just adding few things here and there that are not going to fix because you don't have the people strategy. It's not there. And usually when it's too late, the founders are already into firefighting that it's extremely hard to get them to sit down and just think.
I love that so much. So it's about focus on building the foundation, but taking into account not to bring too much complexity at the beginning, but also not to bring like the systems and the process that are needed too late, right?
Yeah, exactly. So start by thinking, then you're extremely cautious of what you build and what you add on your paper, right? You have a blank page of paper to start with.
Yeah.
cherish it.
Yeah.
And then only be adding what is solving a problem.
Yeah. And I mean, you spend so much time with founders. What are the biggest challenges that they face, especially at the beginning when they are building their startups with people?
The main challenge that founders have is to try to be somebody else, I would say. Usually they have an idea of what a great leader is, or what type of company they want to build. Google coming very often. And they try to build something that is not there. So usually my advice to them is first look in the mirror, see who you are, and embrace that person. Because you will not build Google unless you're Larry and Sergey. Okay? And you're not Larry and Sergey, so the company that you will build will be yours, and it will be unique in that way. Yeah. Second, there is so much that as a founder you need to learn in your journey. Things that you have never done. You know, when you're a founder at the beginning, you're wearing all the hats, right? You're the salesperson, the marketing person, the HR person, the admin person. You're doing everything, and you're not good at everything. So you need to learn new things, and then you're going to move as a manager and then a leader. So a lot of skills to take on and to learn, which are hardly ones that you can learn overnight. You know, it takes time to acquire all those skills. So you don't have the luxury to become somebody else on top of that. So the main thing that I see is that founders do not take that time, early stage, to identify who they are, what drives them, what also really pisses them off, and to build an organization based on that. This is the beginning of the foundation. It's really the foundations of the culture and the values in the organization.
Yeah, I like that. And what do you see as some of the misconceptions or myths that you hear around the startups?
Well, so that's a great segue into what I just said earlier. Culture is a big one. So a lot of founders feel that culture is something that you can build. But you don't build a culture. Culture is. It just is. Usually what we mean by culture is how people experience working with you, right? What it's like to work in your company. The reality is that you can't fake it. It's just the way it is. And that's why it's so important for founders to do this work of knowing who they are, because then they can identify what type of company they are, how people experience working with them. Are they more data-driven or not data-driven, fun or not fun? We don't need to be fun. You're not going to force yourself to be fun. And there are people that actually much prefer to go in organizations that are just work and professional and corporate-y and all this, and that's fine. So the first misconception is to think that culture is something that you build, and as a consequence, people look at values as more as objectives. We need to be innovative. We need to be challenging. We need to be blah, blah, blah. Well, if you need to, it means that you are not, and so you can't describe yourself as such. Whereas when you define your culture, it's we are this. People will use those terminologies to describe what it's like to work there. And therefore, you can hire people who fit with that environment. You can hire people who like an environment and they will thrive in that environment, as opposed to hiring people that you wish will bring this in your company. That is a terrible mistake. It always ends badly. So that's the first one. The second one is, it's quite an interesting one. It's around incentives. So there is there's a belief that in order for people to be motivated to do something, you need to put a carrot in front of them. But that's not true. That works for donkeys, not for people. So in order to motivate people, you actually need to trust them. You need to provide them some guidance. You need to equip them well. They need to know, what's the objective, how to get there, what do I have to get there, and then trust that you hired the best person. I mean, if you hire somebody, it's because you believe that the right person is, so let them do it. Okay? When you have a carrot, you're kind of doing the other around. It's like, I don't trust you, so in order for you to get there, I'm going to put a carrot in front of you. And then you'll get there. What happens when you do that is that the people, instead of seeing the big problem, so your mission and how they contribute to your mission, they will only see the carrot, which is, I need to do that. And so it really reduces their ability to perform, to be innovative. And so we have seen, research has shown that performance actually decreases with incentives. And the higher the incentive, the lower the performance. So incentives are to be banished. It's typically the end of your bonus when we tell people, if you do this, then you will have your annual bonus. It's much better to bring this in the day-to-day, right? If what you've just done with that client is amazing, here is a feedback, and you can have potentially a small reward with it. That's how it works much more. But yeah, no, the annual bonus is quite terrible. But there's also one thing about the annual bonus that is really wrong somehow. It's because when you have an annual bonus for actually doing what you're hired to do, it means that the salary then is only just for you to show up, right? And so, of course, the performance is not going to be there.
Wow, these two are so big, so big. So, and I see what when you started with in terms of culture, I see a lot of founders even going to other companies to see their values, and then have define the values for their company, and as you said, like almost as an objective. What I like about what you said is like you start with yourself, you build a place which is yourself, and then you attract the people that resonate with that, exactly. Right? And you don't need to have a company which has a culture which is not you, right? You don't have to, right? And I really, really love that. And then the second, the incentives one, is a huge one. And I think we can go now a bit deeper. So maybe you can give us some examples so that we can better understand of what are some KPIs that you think they are super important today for startups to measure the people performance in their organizations.
Yeah, so one is what I mentioned, the behaviors. So being able to measure the behaviors of our employees, their ability to perform. That's the first one. The second that I encourage companies to keep an eye on, right? Those are indicators, so that things that we want to check to ensure that we are on track, is the quality of their managers. Performance happens in the teams. It doesn't happen at the top, and that's something that most founders have to realize and to remember. Once you're at the top, you're here to build the strategy, but then the execution happens at in the teams. So the managers are extremely important to drive performance. I have never seen a performance review change a poor performer into a high performer. Only a good manager can do that. So the role of a manager is to manage the team. Today, most managers have management responsibilities on top of doing the rest of their work. And so it's extremely important that we have managers that can take time for the team, coach them, mentor them, clarify the goals, remove roadblocks, etc., etc. So finding ways to measure the value and the quality of your management teams is very important. There's a great tool in a book that was written by Marcus Buckingham, which is called First Break All the Rules, that gives 12 questions that you can build a survey on and send to the teams. So that's the second. So the third one is the ability for a startup to innovate. Without innovation, a startup cannot be, a corporate cannot either, but a startup even less. So it's extremely important to find ways to identify whether your organization is able to stay ahead of the curve. And most startups struggle with that, especially because the founders do not want to let go of the control. And when the management doesn't let go of the control, it means that everything is stuck with them. All the ideas, all the decisions are at the top, and they become the bottleneck of the organization.
Can you give one example in each one of them? Just an example so that people can know what are you talking about when you're talking, for example, about behaviors, about quality of the manager and the ability to innovate.
Okay. So in terms of behaviors, basically that's usually what you would implement at the annual review.
Yeah.
And so you would have, instead of checking the objectives and the achievements, you would check the how. How did they get there? So the objectives and the achievements are more illustrations of how they have shown behaviors. And so behaviors would be, let's check just one, but problem solving. What is their ability to solve problems? And it's much more valuable for an organization to have people that can solve problems than somebody that managed to reach their objective once. So that's for the behaviors. For the managers, so I mentioned there's a list of questions that are in that book. But that's their ability to create rapport with the team. How much feedback do they give? Does the team feel valued? Do they can they speak freely and provide ideas, etc. So those are the type of things that you want to have in a good manager. And the third one, ability to innovate. There are three elements that drive innovations. The first one is diversity. So you need to have diversity in the team to be able to bring different ideas. So checking that you have good diversity in your teams and in your organization. The second one is empowerment. So how much people can make, drive questions, the ideas, how much they can ideate, and how worried they are of failure as well. So it's a whole thing around building a safe environment. So seeing where the best ideas come from. If they all come from the top, you're probably not going to be able to innovate. If you have systems where you see that some ideas have been coming from, typical example is Google, the 20% projects. Coming from the bottom. Okay, so that would be the second one, and the third one is engagement. So people need to be engaged and work on something that is meaningful to them. That's what I spoke about with seeing the big picture as opposed to the carrot.
Yeah, I like it so much, and I think myself I felt challenges on defining exactly what shall we measure in order to really to add value to the organizations. And I love what you brought. You brought completely new perspectives from measure the behaviors, measure the quality of your managers, measure your ability to innovate. That's what's going to take you to your goals and not just focusing on the goal itself. So that's awesome. I loved it. And so.
If I may.
Yes, you may.
we live in an era where data is everything.
Yeah.
The truth is in data. I think it's an error, and we need to bring back the human in the equation. And that's the whole thing about ChatGPT, right? Okay, we have a lot of information, but what can we do without human interpretation? And so it's all about that. And so what we're seeing and what I'm seeing in organizations today is that everybody, leaders, managers, HR, they're eager to use tools that will generate data in order to solve people's problem. And so by doing that, we're removing ourselves even further from the issue. Whereas just removing the tools from time to time would help to just connect with the people and understand. I think it's one of the main challenge of our time, reconnecting people and just seeing how simple it is just to speak to each other as opposed to have systems that will. It's just that it's uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable. It's a big challenge for managers because when they have the possibility to ask their team how they feel or to send a survey, they will all go for the survey.
That's such a huge topic, there's so much data out there, so much technology, but organizations are made of people. People is what drives the performance, as you say. And in order to build more, let's say, human-centric organizations, what is it's such a huge topic, but what is something very small that leaders can do to go in that direction?
Yeah, very simple. Do not do. So I said you have to cherish your blank page of paper. This is gold. When you're starting as a founder, you have nothing, right? There's no processes. There's nothing. It's great. That's why in a startup, the early stage are always seen as the good old times. It's because that we were so connected. So we need to stay lean. In order to stay lean, you need to be extremely careful about every single process, policy, tool that you bring in your organization. How can you be careful? Ask the question, why do we need this? Is it solving an existing problem or a problem that we know is coming? If not, you'll most probably just copy-pasting what other companies are doing and not really knowing what it's bringing. Or you're seeing benefits of something you don't have broken, and it will create more complexity and most probably problems. So it's all about not doing.
Yeah, that's a great one. And for people they are leaders and they want to build a high performance team, what's your advice? What can they do?
In order to drive high performance team, if we start from the beginning, first be clear about who you are, what you want to do, okay? So the plan needs to be clear. Then you need to hire the right people in the right roles at the right time. And then you need to provide them, equip them properly. And this is when it comes with the right managers, the right environment, a safe environment where they can innovate, they can ideate, they can be empowered, they can try things and fail. And have a positivity.
You mentioned something that I really like, which is to bring the right people to the right role at the right time.
Yes.
But for a startup who is starting and there's limited resources, what's your advice to get the right people?
Yes. Very good question. One of the biggest concern of founders early stage. So first thing, be clear in terms of what you want. The thing is that when you start, you don't know what you need. So my first advice is hire fast, fire fast. It's not something that I would recommend ever to a bigger organization, but for a smaller organization, that's the best way of learning. Failing is the best way of learning. So hire fast, figure out what goes well, what goes wrong, and fire fast as well. So get the learning, and don't worry about I don't want to be a bad boss, etc. You can still be human while letting people go. I always say there's only win-win and lose-lose in an organization. There's no win-lose. So if one of the two parties between the employee and the employer are losing, it's a lose-lose situation. So it's extremely important to stay in the win-win all the time. So first, you need to identify what you need and go as fast as possible. Second, it's true that startups do not have a lot of resources. And the thing is that actually the best source of hire and the most qualitative source of hires is the one that is the least expensive. It is network, referrals, friends that you meet, asking friends of friends, etc. So it's all about how you phrase the question as well. Don't ask necessarily for, do you know somebody who is looking for a job in this? It's like, who is the best person that you know in that field? Who is the best person that you have ever worked with doing this? And then you speak to that person. They're probably not looking for a job, but who cares? You speak to that person. Perhaps they'll come on board. But worst case scenario, they're probably good people know good people, so they will refer you other people. So you build your network this way. So that's the least consuming in terms of money. It's consuming in terms of time, obviously. So from the moment you need to hire more people, and I would say from 20 people in a year, so from the moment you need to hire a minimum of 20 people per year, it's a no-brainer, have an in-house recruiter. The cost, the return of investment is immediate. And frankly, a recruiter doesn't have to be expensive. You can have a good recruiter with only 2-3 years experience.
So you mentioned about people's strategy, but how do we ensure that we maintain trust as an organization grows?
One of the challenges that startups have during their growth is when they get into hypergrowth. Because all of a sudden, there are a lot of people that join the company in a very limited amount of time. They double, triple within 6 months or less. And so what is happening is there's a huge distance that all of a sudden is created between the leadership team and the rest of the team. And that's when silos start to form and that trust starts to be lost. Because in order to manage such a change between a small organization where everybody was speaking, in a small organization, everybody is part of all the decision, all the challenges, they know where we are, they know what their objectives are, what's the challenge, they know all that. It's clear. If they have a question, they go directly to the CEO and they ask for it. Now, when you have 100 people all of a sudden, it's not quite the same. So you need to put in place some communication tools to ensure that the connection still exists between the top and the bottom. And that's usually when this is broken or not existing, that we have in the teams people that feel that they're not being kept in the loop, that they are being told that last time it's been decided without them, etc., which most organizations have. So in order to solve that, you need to create that from the foundation and ensure that you are building a true leader at the top, somebody that will communicate, and over-communicate all the time. That's really one of the key jobs of the CEO when they reach a big organization. And then have good leaders, good managers that will be able to be the ambassadors and help the teams understand. HR helps building this framework, but they're not part of the overall system. They're building it.
I think just to finalize this topic, I think it would be nice to finalize with incentive, which is a huge challenge for many startups. Then what's your final recommendation in terms of how do you build an incentive for employees that really brings value to the company and also motivates employees to be part of the journey?
So we need to look into what motivates people here. I mean, the incentive, why do we have incentive? It's to motivate them. So we know that the carrot doesn't motivate, actually. It doesn't, or it does for the wrong reason. When you have a carrot, you're basically making a promise. You're saying, if you do this, then you have that. In your brain, in the employee's brain, they already have it. They already, when you tell an employee your salary is going to be this fixed plus this bonus, they already calculated that in total they can have, and they will have this. So this is not motivating at all, because at the end of the year, how many employees actually have 100% of their bonus? 10 to 20% only in an organization, usually, especially those that use the bell curve. So it means that you have a system where 80% to 90% of your people will be deceived and frustrated. And the 10%, they will be potentially happy, but they will most probably say, well, that's what I'm worth in any case. That's what. So incentive not working. What motivates people is the impact, the fact that they feel that they're doing something that is meaningful. And so it's all about getting into that positive cycle where I feel useful, I feel that I'm doing something that is meaningful, I feel that I'm good, I'm feeling recognized, and therefore I want to do more. And so when you get into that cycle, it's immediate. And money is only just something that needs to cover the need. So you need to pay people, fairly. But that's a conversation that happens once a year. The rest is about you and how you can, get into that circle where, you're super excited to get into a challenge, to do something. You're doing something that you love, that you feel good doing. That's what you do today, right? Yeah. I mean, you love doing what you do, so that pushes you. You don't count the hours, and then you get recognized for it, and then you will do more of that. And so that's why it's not incentive, it's recognition. Recognition, so bringing it back to the immediate action. When you do something amazing, immediately I would tell you, fantastic, that you've done is just great. By doing this, you helped a number of leaders, get better clarity in terms of how to measure performance, blah, blah, blah.
So do you suggest, for example, for startups to give bonus at the end of the year to their employees, or no?
Not at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, not at all. So no bonus.
Yes. And
if you want to have some additional on top of the salary, then that's on specific occasion when people do exceptionally well. So they go beyond the expectations. The rest is covered by the salary.
Yeah.
But if you do exceptionally well in terms of either achievement, but also it could be efforts. Somebody that spends a whole weekend working on a report to ensure that it's ready for Monday morning, that's exceptional, and I want to be able to recognize that. Yeah. And attitude is the same. Helping a colleague while we're very busy, but it's something that you want to recognize, because by recognizing, you will get it again.
Yeah. What I like is that you focus on what really motivates an employee, and then focus on that, and not just give the carrot to the person. Really, really, really good. And we are coming to the end of our conversation, and but I have a last question, which is many people ask you a lot of questions, but what is one question that not many people ask you and you would love to answer?
So a lot of people ask me, as I get a lot of questions on how to do this, how to do that. I wish I was getting more questions around what not to do from founders, and also why do we do that, or why do we need to do that? Because if I was to receive those questions, then it means that already they're clicking. It's like there's an understanding that we don't have to do everything the way it's been done before, and we're starting really getting into people strategy, which is how do we do it, and why do we need to do it this way. So yes, what should we not be doing at every stage of growth of our company, instead of focusing on how to build, and why do we need an annual bonus?
Yeah.
Why do we need incentives?
I really resonate with that. So I'm starting my company. I learn a lot, like that's so important, sometimes more than what to do is what not to do. So I really like that. And thank you so much for coming. I'm really happy that I brought you. I know there's so many people out there, they have dreams, they have a vision, you know, and they have a lot of desire to create impact in the world, but somehow there's something missing in terms of how do you bring people with you. Yeah, so I'm happy that you are doing that job, you know, and so yeah, keep going, and thank you for coming to the
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.